All right, good morning, everybody. We're going to go ahead and get started here. It's a few minutes after 9:30. This will be our final briefing here on the strong cold front for today and tonight, leading to impacts that last into tomorrow. So no major changes with our headlines. We're going to go through each of these hazardous elements to this event here coming up. What you saw yesterday, one big change from yesterday to today is we moved the wind threat impact from significant to extreme. We had a little bit stronger winds in the forecast now than what we had yesterday, and we'll go over some specifics with that. Otherwise, the coastal flooding remains significant, elevated for severe, and extreme for marine. Those didn't change. So here's the peak wind gust forecast. We're similar to what we had yesterday for inland portions, interior portions of eastern North Carolina, but the winds have come up by a few miles per hour along the coast. So instead of peaking out in the 60s, 60 mile per hour or so, what we had yesterday, we're now into the lower 70s, which you can see there in purple, we've highlighted with hurricane force wind gusts possible. And so how does that translate to our headlines? Everything's now either wind advisory for inland locations or a high wind warning along the coast. We did add some extra verbiage because we really want to get your attention if you're here in this down East Carteret through the Outer Banks, which you can see there on the bottom right, and I'm going to read it just so it adds a little bit more emphasis. Avoid being outside in forested areas around trees and branches. If possible, remain in the lower levels of your home during gusty winds and avoid windows, and use caution if you have to drive, especially if you have a high profile vehicle. These high winds are going to be ahead of any severe weather, any storms, and there's going to be a potential for damaging wind gusts with storms that we do have a little bit later on this afternoon and evening. But ahead of that, we could still have gusty winds that could lead to power outages. So please make sure you're paying attention to what's going on today. This is an example similar to what we used yesterday for our wind forecast. So a couple of points, we picked Greenland as an inland point, Swan Quarter along the western edge of the Pamlico Sound, then Hatteras and Beaufort here along the coast. Just like yesterday, no real change in the speed, the direction of the winds. You notice how we start out southeasterly, then it becomes southerly, and then it goes southwesterly to westerly, and that's when things sustain at that direction for a decent duration once the cold front comes through the area. And so the peak winds are like we had in the previous map, around 50 in Greenville, upwards of 60 miles per hour in Swan Quarter. But you can see the Hatteras area, we have new peaks now up into the lower 70s and into the mid 60s down here closer to Beaufort. And so that wind field is going to translate to coastal flooding issues here in eastern North Carolina. No changes to the amounts that we used yesterday. What you see in orange, it's still 2 to 4 feet above ground level, above normally dry ground. That's the coastal flooding that we're anticipating with this system. Then what you see in the lighter yellows or lighter orange there is coastal flood advisory with our anticipation of 1 to 2 feet above ground level. We are expecting high surf issues along all beaches today and into tonight. And one of the things we want to note here is this concept of rapidly rising water on the sound side of the Outer Banks tonight into tomorrow, especially north of Buxton. So what happens is we have the southeasterly wind that's going to blow the water to the west, right? Southeasterly wind today is going to blow the water to the west. We go southerly a little bit later on, and then eventually go southwesterly, and that's going to take the Pamlico Sound and slosh it towards the sound side of the Outer Banks. And so just to make sure you're aware of the timing of this later on this afternoon and evening into tonight and tomorrow with the elevated water levels on the sound side of the Outer Banks due to the change in wind direction. Translating now to talking about the severe weather potential. Nothing's changed. We're still in a 3 out of 5 for the enhanced risk of severe thunderstorms today. Scattered severe thunderstorms possible this afternoon through midnight. One thing you notice there, instead of just saying 70 miles per hour, now we're saying 70 to 80 miles per hour with potentially damaging wind gust later on this afternoon and into this evening with a few potentially strong tornadoes as well. So let's take a look at where things are right now. This is the radar depiction as of 8:30 this morning. So I want to talk a little bit about the timing of storms. So let me get out of the PowerPoint here for a second and go into talking about what we have as far as later on today. So this is one of our models that gives us a handle on timing of severe storms and convection. And so this is roughly 3 p.m. and we can go forward in time, and I want you to watch. Starting roughly around 3 p.m., that's when we're starting to get into that elevated risk of severe thunderstorms with potential for tornadoes that will last through the evening hours. So this is 3 p.m., 4 p.m., 5 p.m., 6 p.m., and you can see these sort of discrete cells is what we call them meteorologically, but these discrete cells that have the potential to produce damaging wind gusts and even tornadoes into the evening hours. This line you see here now that's on the western edge of the screen or through the central part of the state, that's going to move through the area through the evening. We'll also have a severe threat with that as far as damaging winds and tornadoes. So let's watch the progression of that. That's 7 p.m., 8 p.m., 9 p.m. It's pretty much across central North Carolina, 10 p.m. and 11 p.m. offshore. So don't anchor to specific timings on this. This is just a progression of how this will evolve later this evening. Timing could be off by an hour or two, so don't anchor to just the timing here, but we're anticipating the severe weather threat to last from roughly 2 to 3 p.m. I'll back up to 2 to 3 p.m. Here's 5, 7, 9, and 11, and eventually off the coast. So just have a heads up on that. And as we always like to harp with any nighttime severe weather threats, we want to make sure you have multiple ways to receive warnings. So have your cell phone on and charge. You know, we could have power outages before we have severe weather later this afternoon and evening. So make sure your phone is fully charged. Have your TV, radio, NOAA weather radio, multiple ways to receive warnings should we have to issue any later today. And then lastly, we want to bring this up. This is the outlook from the Storm Prediction Center out of Norman, Oklahoma. This is our overall categorical outlook, which we've already stated is enhanced 3 out of 5. But what's unique here is if you go to the tornadoes tab, and I can't zoom in to North Carolina, but you can see we're in this hatched area of 10%. Well, why am I showing you that? We're showing you this because this is fairly rare. This doesn't happen often in North Carolina. And it's also January. We're not in a typical severe weather season. So this is fairly rare. We really want you to have your heads up on this. This is the 10% hatched tornado, and this is wind, which is a 30% hatched, meaning more of a significant severe opportunity. So we're showing you this to make sure you have awareness is at a maximum level for potential for severe weather later this afternoon and evening. All right, so I'm going to jump back into the briefing now. Storm total rainfall, we're really looking at this 1 to 1.5 to 2 inches locally. So not as big of a threat on that. We would only caveat that with saying maybe for some of the more urban areas of say Greenville, Kinston, Jacksonville, maybe New Bern. If we have some training cells over those areas, those could potentially produce some locally enhanced flooding areas if we do have any later on this evening. So just be aware of that. And lastly, on the marine side, all of our coastal waters, sounds, inland rivers are now in storm warnings. Those were updated yesterday afternoon with the latest forecast package. And this is a depiction of our peak seas off the coast. So we're still looking at 20 to 25 foot seas offshore. And for the coastal waters, the seas are going to linger above small craft advisory levels for several days. If you remember the wind forecast, we're staying at gale force and strong small craft advisory level winds that last for several days after this event. And with that, I will end on this last slide similar to yesterday. I don't want to read all this to you. You have this briefing as of 7 a.m. this morning, and we'll just open up to any questions that anybody might have.